Well, as I've looked around these beds, what's clear is I need to do a bit more weeding again. And this leek bed I only weeded a few days ago in reality, but we're still getting some more mare's tail working its way through. But these leeks are looking really nice size now for the time of year. And this second variety is obviously a smaller variety. This is Musselburgh, and I think this is Blue Soleil. And yeah, they're going to be really good. And as you may have seen in a previous video, I've interplanted underneath the beans some more leeks, and they were all laying down when I put them in, but it doesn't take long for them to start standing up, and that'll be just an extra crop. No flowers on the marigolds that I put in with the runner beans yet, but they're certainly getting to the point where they've budded, so they won't be long. And then the runner beans are Zar. Zar is a white flower, and we've got the odd red flower in here. I obviously mixed up some of the seed, but they are all looking healthy, and we do have some nearly at the top of the canes. So lots of flowers, and it won't be long now until we have some beans, and that'll be really good. I think we've just about finished the beans that were in the freezer. This is my munchkin pumpkin in a pot, and I've still not put it up high yet. I'm happy that it's doing well here and seems to be slug free at the moment, so we'll just let it get on a bit further, and then maybe we'll put it up where the strawberries have been once they're over. And many of you will have seen my method of growing parsnip, which is in toilet rolls, and I would imagine down below the soil line those toilet rolls could well be decomposing, and the roots may in fact be pushing and splitting them. That's the whole idea. They're damp, they won't create any real barrier for that process, but what's really pleasing is that the foliage on these parsnips is indicating that the plants are healthy and doing well. And I put a few extra crops in the end. I believe this was the 60-day broccoli. I noticed one has got some damage and is lent over, so I keep an eye on that. In here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 healthy plants. That one's killed over. This one didn't really get started, and nor did that one. So I may well put some other plants in here over the coming week or so, just to make good use of the bed. Beans are ready to crop, I think. And looking at these, the plants are huge now. And down in here, we've got lots of pods. Now some of these look small, and therefore I might wait a bit longer for these. But surprisingly, the ones that I planted a bit later and that are over here are definitely ready for harvesting. Now, who'd have thought that this second tranche of sowing would be ready before that? And that was done some weeks before. But I guess to some extent it may be the exposure to the light, it may be this particular soil. I think this is a bit more rich than the plants over here. So just goes to show, when it comes to the planning that you put into succession, it doesn't always work out that way. And the plants that I put in as the third sowing or the third planting, they're still much smaller, and I think as I expected, they're not fully developed yet, and those pods will come on that much later. So we've just got that strange difference between the first and second sowing, but as long as it gives us good food, we don't mind. The swede that I put in, having taken out the first garlic, is looking quite healthy. The edge one's got a bit of an attack by the slugs, and we put down some of the eggshell, and that seems to have kept the slugs at bay a little, and now they're starting to develop, which is great. And the rain that we've had's given this patch that I took the last garlic out of a real good soaking. And viewers of the channel have pointed out that, of course, white rot, which I seem to have on some of the garlic in the area, affects all alliums, so onions and leeks. So we won't be going into this bed with any of those varieties in the coming years. In reality, I think we'll be resiting garlic, leeks and onions to other locations, and of course we can still use this for many of the other crops. The sprouts are looking really healthy. We've got just one that doesn't seem to want to get started, but it doesn't look unhealthy. Got a bit of bindweed in there, so this is another bed that needs some weeding. But there's plenty of plants in there that are looking strong, and they're not far off me considering what I need to do to stake them. As soon as I start to see any signs of leaning, I'll be in there with some canes, I think, because that was a problem I had last year. Broccoli in here is heading up nicely. Got some heads there that I'll be harvesting in the not too distant future. So that's looking like a healthy bed. And this, which was the last bed that I planted and put kale in, you can see how those kale seedlings have really got going in the warm and wet weather. And we should have a good supply of kale through the winter months. So I've had loads of strawberries off of the hanging strawberries of Ballon, and this works really well. No slugs up here, very few pests, and whenever it rains, these get well soaked, and we're getting a good supply of strawberries on an ongoing basis. So that's good news. What isn't quite so good news is that my cold frame seems to have fallen apart. It's going to need a bit of repair, I think. I don't quite know what's happened here, but I certainly need to get onto it reasonably quickly so that we don't have any further damage to it. So we'll put a repair on my list. In here we've got collie and romanesco and broccoli. Now the broccoli in here seem to be on long thin stems, which isn't desirable really, and not quite sure why. This one seems to be forming a bit better, but what is doing really well is the collies, which you can just see the hearts forming, or the curds I think they're called, forming inside the plants. And we've got some really good cabbage hearts in there as well. So this bed's really prospering. The cosmos flowers are now looking wonderful. I shall be doing that again in years to come. And the anti-slug defences, the copper tape, does seem to be working. And I think slugs could easily get to that pot from the grass behind it. So I'm really confident that that's working well. Next to it is the beetroot, 3 varieties: Chiogo, Solo and Boltardi, and all of them seem to be faring well. We've got some mare's tail in there, so again a bit more weeding to be done, but I'm starting to see the beetroots forming now underneath the foliage. That's a good sign. So this is the Swede bed. This is the Swedes I put in first, and you can see the plants are that much more well formed, and I've interplanted with some spring onions and they're coming on nicely. We'll soon be pulling those out, I think, and letting the Swede get on with their thing. And I've got a couple more Swede plants still in the polytunnel. I'll probably end up popping them in the end there. This celeriac bed's doing well. Celeriac monarch in here, and celeriac prins, monarch over the far side, prins over this side. And you can see slightly different foliage between the two, but they're all similar size and doing well, interplanted with the odds and sods of onions that I had left, and they look like they're going to come to something, so that's good. And the single broccoli that I put in here, just not doing well, pretty much flowering, so don't know, I think I might have him out of there pretty soon. The cabbage, on the other hand, really doing well, and we've got primo cabbage here, which is golden acre, and we've got the greyhound cabbage at the left hand side, and they're all hearting up and doing nicely, so we'll be eating cabbage from there soon. And this is broccoli again, and the head's starting to form now, which will be nice. It looks like we're going to have a lot of broccoli at once, so we'll probably be harvesting that, making something and freezing it. The calendula, I've been deheading these on a regular basis, and the new flowers just keep coming, which is fantastic. And every time I deadhead them, they go to Mrs. K's collection of calendula, ready for the calendula balm that she's going to make. And these celeriac, which I really took great care over and are continuing to feed and just pamper a little bit, are doing really well. I'm pleased to see the roots forming, and they'll be in there for a lot longer now, but they're, I'm sure, will come to being a really good vegetable and crop this year. This is the turnip bed. We've got the white turnip, Milan, and the Norfolk purple turnip over on the right hand side, and we've had a couple out of here and they've been really good, and looks like they're just continuing to grow on well. And I'll just take this down and show you what we're dealing with. So you can see the size of the turnips in there, they're really nice, and when they get to that size, that's when I get them out. And we've got a couple of nasty little slugs in there, so we'll just move them out. Okay, so the carrots, this is Nantes 2, getting really bushy. I'm not going to move that much because I don't want to attract the carrot root fly, but they're doing well in that pot, and hopefully we won't be too far off harvesting some probably small but nice and fresh carrots. Some lavender starting to flower amongst all this grass, and you've heard me say many times I'm going to be taking this out at some point. You can see how difficult it gets. That grass I really don't want around, and I can cut the tops off. I just need to be careful I don't just take all the lavender flowers out, so it's a real dilemma. So that is definitely coming out this winter, and will increase the paths around the beds. And this year we're just going to have to tolerate it. I might be taking those grass heads off soon though, to stop any reseeding of grass elsewhere that I can avoid. The potatoes, you saw me take out a pot of potatoes, which we were really pleased with, and these now have died right back, and so we'll be taking these out. And I noticed quite a lot of snails and slugs in these, and if I leave them too long we'll get slug damage on the potatoes, so they're coming out of there really soon. You can see snails absolutely everywhere. It really is quite a challenge, but that's all part of gardening. Okay, and into the polytunnel. And the polytunnel's looking good. This bed is not so productive now. We've taken a lot of the salad crops out. We've got quite a few beetroot, which we're taking on a needs basis, and quite a lot of spring onions, which we're doing the same. And these last couple of lettuce that have bolted, we'll be heading over to the chickens. The cucumber is gradually moving up this still pole, very slowly I have to say, but we do have a small cucumber on now, which is good to see. Just going to get my big foot in there, and we can see it forming there, which is nice. And this plant also is going to need to be tamed and I think tethered to something, and it's growing very slowly up there, but it is making progress. The beetroot down there are getting to a really nice size, so there will be a time when we take them out and boil them and possibly make some beetroot chutney, which we always enjoy. I'm thinking that if I get this out, I could plant a few of the extra cucumbers that I successfully have grown in this root trainer, and so that might become a bit of a plan. We can see here the additional swede that I can still put in the ground, and I don't want to be too long doing that now because they're getting quite big in there. The tomatoes, quite a lot of fruit on now, and that's great to see. Still pinching out the shoots carefully and feeding these once a week, a fairly dilute feed. And we've got quite a lot of flowers on the Crimson Crush, and those earlier ones have got more fruit on our Moneymaker. And we can see some nice trusses forming here, which hopefully will carry a fair few tomatoes. The beefsteak tomatoes, that much greener in these big pots and covered in flowers. So again, I'm hoping for a good amount of fruit, but I am wanting to minimize the fruit in here so that we get some really big ones. And all the 4 varieties are doing well. Got a bit of apple mint here, which is running riot. That's why you keep it in a pot, because it is very prolific, but it is a nice flavoured mint and has got that slight apple sort of scent to it really, and flavour of course. And the peppers, wow, they're just going from strength to strength. The amount of leaves now is incredible, but almost every plant now has got another flush of flowers, and just huge amounts of flowers on these. And when I look at this really large group, they are covered in flowers. So I'm really hopeful for a good show of peppers. These now have turned a really bright orange and bright red, and we're going to harvest those pretty soon, I think, and let the plants develop the next flush of flowers. And this one, which I hadn't identified, is clearly the chocolate pepper variety, and it's thinner than I thought it would be, but it's attractive, and we'll see what it tastes like. My aubergines, my next step, following all the direction that I've received, but you can see nice flower on there, and looking forward to aubergines. The strawberries, I'm hoping for a second flush. They're looking still quite strong plants, awful lot of runners, and that's a job on my list for taking runners and planting them into pots. I would think the way they're going, I might have some rooting in amongst the carrots, and I'll get those out. We don't want them competing with the carrots, but the carrots are looking very healthy. And down here you can see the growth of the root, which is making for quite a nice carrot, I think. And we'll just let them keep going and getting larger, and hopefully we'll have sweet candle carrots of a good size. Down here I've got the thyme and the sage that I grew from seed, and yeah, it's really bushing up and coming on. Some of them have died back and disappeared, but I sort of expect that. If I end up with 20 plants, that'd be amazing. So we've got the orange in there, this on the left hand side, and on the right hand side we've got the de Provence, which is the one that was indicating that it's really good for cooking with. And then that's the white sage growing in the middle. So be pleased to use those for cooking. So the polytunnel has done really well. The temperatures have leveled out a little bit over the last few days, and I think the plants have enjoyed that slightly cooler weather, having gone through a spell of it being really very hot indeed. And the canoeing of these leaves doesn't seem to have done any harm to the tomatoes. So that's the plot, and of course there's some tough bits which are going to be a challenge over the coming days and weeks, where the warmth and the wet is driving the growth of the weeds. And well, I'll just show you some of the areas that are getting a bit challenging. So as I said, the grass is really getting going. Got an infestation of dock leaves here. Of course, we've got all that grass gone to seed in what ultimately will become a pathway. So I think that's beating me at the moment, and I need to try and get on top of it. It's interesting when you look at the edges of the plot, where regardless of cutting back, things like this bramble just so prolific and starting to hit the nets there and wrap itself around the water tank. So there's some work to do there. Now, I gave the polytunnel a cut back around the edges only a week or so ago, and still the brambles are winning through and stinging nettles are getting cracking again, and it's a constant effort to keep on top of them at this time of year. Now when you get to the height of the growing season, of course the weeds are at the height of their growing season too, and this path that I put in, I'm glad that I did, because the weed growth where I'm not giving it any attention just shows you how quickly the land could recover to a wild area. This area where I grew the potatoes over the last month or so, and you may remember I put in a couple of bushes here, well, completely swamped now. We've got a variety of different weeds in there, but you can just see how it's becoming overrun, and it really is very challenging to keep a plot under control at this time of year. And time obviously is a big player in that, and you just have to weigh up what you're going to spend your time on. And it's really important that all the effort that's gone into growing the crops isn't lost. So you have to live with some of those things winning through, whilst you make sure that the effort that you've put into the crops is going to be fulfilled. So it's a balance, and that's the way of a large plot like this, working out how best you spend your time. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.